What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Craftsman podcast.
Go ahead. Who's our guest?
No.
Who's our guest?
No, Tyler. No, please.
Well, I don't want to take away from
interrupt.
him, but I was just looking at this Mr. Beast guy, and I was like, damn.
We do not have Mr. Beast, guys.
I know, but we should.
Mr. Beast would have no idea who we are.
That's fine.
Well,
Alex
obviously.
probably had no idea who we were either.
Alex might not. That's very true. So speaking of Alex, today we have Alex, aka Mr. Build It. Mr. Build It on all social media channels. We get into social media content creation and how he actually was never in this in the building or craftsmanship or woodworking industry and decided to go full force into it, leaving healthcare behind. We also get into the difficulties of being a dad with kids.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
A lot of difficulties or a lot of kids?
A lot of difficulties, not that many kids. Be more
Not that many
difficulties
kids.
if there were more kids.
That's an accurate statement.
Yeah.
So we get into that. We talk about, the struggles that we face as dads and setting a good example. But we do dig into content creation, and the primary reason for this episode, because it's a little different. We're not talking so much about the business side of it or even business in woodworking and contracting, but it's the interesting side of content creation and how it can be lucrative. And even if you take little bits and pieces of it, we oftentimes talk about what other things can we do in this career, in our careers, to make more money and have another steady stream of income or passive income. And I think there's a few key takeaways here.
I didn't know why it would be any different, but it's no different than any other career. If you want to be successful at it, you really have to take the full dive, go 110% into it, because there's a ton of stuff to learn and to know. And obviously we just scratched the surface, but it's a lot of work. It doesn't just happen because you had a lucky break in a couple viral videos. It happened intentionally.
Right. And if you want free tools, it's 110% for 5 years, I think he
Rigid or Ryobi. Top of the line.
We'll get into that. Mr. Build It. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Of course. Alex, I want to know, first and foremost, I want to just ask, where did Mr. Build It come from?
Oh, I think I was inspired from, you mean the name?
Yeah, the name. We never ask that question. I feel like it always, we ignore it all the way to the end, like any guest that has, a name, like an internet name. So I'm just starting with it.
That's such a weird question. It's like asking to give people the explanation behind your tattoos. You're like, it sounds sentimental to me, but it sounds like a dumb thing to somebody else. So my wife and I think, 6 years ago, we're in my backyard. We had a newborn, and I just saw what the whole social media thing was doing with, woodworking and stuff. And I was like, well, I'm going to start this channel. We need a name. What's the name? And for some weird reason, I'm a fan of Marvel comics and all that stuff. And I was like, maybe you should have this kind of thing, like a Mr. Captain something. And then Mr. and Mrs. Smith popped in the back of my head, and I was like, Mr. Build It. All right, Mr. Build It.
Captain Build It.
Yeah, I was just imagine if he was like Captain Woodworker.
Yeah, no, I looking back now though, I think that'd be so much better if I was with Captain.
It would have been funny. So wait, this all stemmed from social media. So social media isn't a byproduct of this.
No. It might legitimately 7 years now. That's when Instagram, when I got onto it. I was learning how to do all this stuff. We were just newly married. We had the first kid, and we got our house, and we're like, let's do stuff to it. And as I was following guys on social media, I was learning how to do this stuff from them. And it wasn't home stuff. It was more of woodworking. You need a table saw, cross sled. What is that like? Well, what it all entails. And so as I was learning from social media, that's when I was like, you know what? I think what I want to do is, there's these guys out there who are getting free tools. Like my buddy Brad Rodriguez from Fix This Build That. He was with Rigid at that point, and I was like, I think he's getting free tools. I have a mission in life. I want to make sure that I can devote 110% to this for 4 or 5 years. I told this to my wife. And if it doesn't work after 4 or 5 years of 110%, then fine, I'll shut it down. But if I can get at least free tools out of this, like a free tool, would consider it to be a win. And that's what it all started with.
Just for the free tool.
Free rigid tools with that.
I'm gonna dedicate 110% of my life for 5 years, and I'm hoping I get a table saw out of
For
this.
some sick depot tools.
That's how broke we were as newlyweds.
No, I get it. So what were you doing before?
I was a respiratory therapist, so I worked at the hospital in the neonatal ICU. So I went on all the critical deliveries for newborns, and then I worked in the adult ICU. So the whole COVID thing, the whole idea of putting people on ventilators, that was my job, is getting people on ventilators and off ventilators.
So you still in medical?
No. I've been full time for the last couple of years. I've quit that.
Okay. I don't think I didn't realize that, but it had to be. I mean, COVID's been around 2 years, a little over 2 years or something like that. So you recently quit.
Well, yes and no. Yes, I did recently quit. I've been doing what I would consider full time, meaning I didn't get a paycheck from the hospital. I was only there for the last maybe three. Let's see here. So I quit officially off the roster in June of 2020. And that was the day my daughter was born. And that means that I was slowly cutting back hours. Instead of doing two jobs, Mr. Build It and that, I was cutting down my hours to the point where my last 2 years of working in the hospital, so from 2018 to 2020, I didn't collect a paycheck. Oh, I mean, I had a paycheck. It was like $123. I might as well be working at the mall at Claire's or something. I finally, basically, when my daughter was finally born, we were still there for the insurance. And at that point, we said, okay, I'm no longer coming in here, and we're not doing that anymore.
I think that usually, I don't know, I'd be the opposite. Like when I had a kid, I'd be like, all right, time for the real job, job. Rather than being like, you know what, I'm going to quit my job.
Yeah, it definitely, especially when it comes to like insurance. But I've worked my way out of it, right? So in the hospital world, you have what's called FTE, full-time employment, and they're in numbers, right? So you might be a 0.30 or a 0.40, and that tells you how many hours you can have a week. And I basically, like, over a course of a couple of quarters, just like kept cutting that number more and more, causing me to like make up that amount on the other side of the fence. And so that was creating content. So when it came to quitting, I wasn't really nervous about like the financial aspect of it because my paychecks were coming from creating content. I was more nervous from like the health insurance aspect. You guys know how expensive it is to buy your own stuff. And then I was also a little bit afraid of, hey, what happens in a year when viewership slows down and whatnot? But, you know, I also believe in burning your bridges. So you end up kind of working your ass off even harder to make sure you don't go back.
Going from a completely different field, basically you bought a house and then you basically wanted to work on your own home, and you were YouTubing and Googling and following people on social media on how to do woodworking, and then you attributed that to, hey, I can renovate this or I can renovate that. But you immediately looked at it as an opportunity to, well, get free tools, but I feel like you also saw the opportunity of this being a job early on. Is that fair to say? Like, how, I guess you said 4 to 5 years that you wanted to do this before you quit. How long was it until you realized that, hey, this is actually a pretty lucrative opportunity?
Ooh, it was interesting because I never knew the money that could be made in creating content, right? Nobody sits down and tells you like, hey, YouTubers can make this kind of money. I just knew that there were people who were making money on this stuff. So I just kind of had to believe in that. When did that paycheck finally start coming in? Before YouTube, I tried to, again, nobody gave me a roadmap of how to get there. So somehow I started falling in with a bunch of bloggers, right? So Brad, I had a blog. Jen Woodhouse, she had a blog. And these are some of the key players that maybe Ryobi would sponsor and whatnot, or Rigid. And so I knew paychecks were coming in. I just didn't know what they look like. So I basically started a blog at that point before the YouTube channel. And I would write blogs that nobody read. I tried learning SEO, but still I didn't get any kind of views or any kind of readers. But I just kept doing it. And I think when you just keep elevating the idea of creating content, like, your pictures become better on Instagram, and, all this, blog posts are coming up. Certain brands who are sponsoring projects, like Home Depot at that time, like Craig, a lot of them, Rust-Oleum, they go, hey, you create content. You might not have an audience, but you create content. You know how to take pictures, you know how to write, you know how to do that stuff. We're going to pay you to create that content to live on our platform. So to answer your question, I would say probably 2 years into it that I actually saw a few paychecks coming in, and they were basically commission jobs by these branded sponsorship deals. Content would live on the Home Depot's blog or something like that.
So it wasn't necessarily creating content for your own page at this point. It was for them. Like, you're basically getting subcontracted to create content.
100%.
And they were finding you because you were creating it, and even though you didn't have an audience. I guess, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to talk to you today is I think that there's this whole other avenue about what we do as builders, as contractors, as woodworkers, as makers, as craftsmen, whatever you want to call yourself. Not you, but the general audience here. But oftentimes we talk about how hard this industry is, and how hard it is to make money, and how to charge the right cost. And we've talked about that from a business standpoint. But what about the other opportunities that exist? And this is what I want to talk about. It's like you've created this opportunity, and more or less out of thin air, where it's like, hey, I looked at this as an opportunity to get some free tools, and now I've turned it into something that supports my wife, my family. I don't have a full-time job, and I'm creating content. And one of the things that people oftentimes trip over is like, I don't have the time to create enough of it, or I don't have a big enough audience, is something that you hear a lot. You literally just answered the fact that, like, you don't need that audience. There's opportunity kind of lies beneath that, where it's like, if you're creating good content, good photos, video, you're a good writer, and you're just sharing it, oftentimes, someone else might see that as valuable for their own page, like you said, Home Depot or these other brands. This podcast is brought to you by Duration Molding and Millwork. You guys can follow them at Duration Millwork on Instagram. But you guys know what this stuff is. It is a true exterior product. They are the only manufacturer that is manufacturing this stuff in custom profiles, standard profiles, in not only custom, but in extremely short lead times. We are working with them on a project right now. You guys are following our Needham build on Instagram and YouTube, but that house has a ton of true exterior products, and we have some custom brackets that the team over at Duration is looking at. They're going to provide us some shop drawings for it, and we are going to put this stuff together, and you'll see all of the install, but excited to work with Duration firsthand for some of this custom stuff. And actually my team was saying, hey, should we get this stuff ordered, relatively soon? I know we're only at the foundation phase. And I said, no. I'm like, you only need a couple weeks. You get that approved shop drawing, you're good to go. You get that stuff ordered, and that stuff's going to show up on site. So excited to work with them on all that custom stuff.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with a buddy of mine. He was like, I guess, considering going cement-based siding route, and it's like, I just don't understand why you would go that route when you have an option like what Duration's doing. It just, to me, it's a much better product. It's going to last longer. Installation is easier. I told him, I was like, I don't know why you would ever, I would never want to use that stuff again.
No.
But unless, I guess maybe some people just don't know about it. So if you don't know about it, definitely check it out. Check out their offerings, because I think you might be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. DurationMillwork.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Reno Run. So they are in Montreal, Toronto, Boston, Chicago, Philly, and Washington, D.C., and expanding. Building materials exactly where you need them. Oversized orders. Got you. Big, large, extra large. They are equipped to deliver any size order. And if you guys want free shipping, podcast.renorun.com/Modern Craftsman. And go ahead.
Sorry. I was trying to find... I'm not a huge, I just don't love ads on like Instagram when I'm trying to look something up, and Renault Run had just posted. I don't know where it is now, but it was a commercial with
sitting there eating lunch.
He was sitting there eating lunch, and it's like he gets to eat lunch now, and then it shows the coffee, and it was so good that I watched the whole thing.
Same here. It's like, this is definitely an
It was
ad.
so bad that it was good. Like, it was intentionally, it was a spoof.
Yeah, totally. I love the fact that, like, you're watching it, you're like, why is this kid eating lunch? And now you see Renault Run in the background, like, dropping off a bag of insulation.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it now. I swear it was just posted on their Instagram page, but I don't see it right now. I'll have to find that and post a link. It was so good. I was dying.
Well, large orders or those last-minute orders, if you need something, RenaultRun.com for more information. This podcast is also brought to you by Rockwool, high-performance, fire-resistant, soundproofing stone wool insulation for your interior and exterior walls, not only helping you achieve local codes and building standards, but getting ahead of future codes. So we're actually part of the Art Class program now. If you guys aren't familiar with it, head over to rockwool.com/rclass. It's a community for those who take pride in their craft, always looking to learn about better materials. But we have been working firsthand with them, not only on our Rhode Island project, but we're also working with them on our Needham project that is coming out of the hole. We're going to be using them for the underslab installation. We're going to actually look to avoid all foam materials on this home as well by using their comfort bat on all of the interior cavities and comfort board where it makes sense.
Yeah, the neat thing about them, even kind of cruising through their Instagram and just seeing the applications that you have, where typically you're thinking it's going to be like a more rigid based foam product. That's what you would typically see there. And I'm looking through the Instagram, and it's like, no, you can use that in that application where you typically be using the foam. And it's so cool to be able to see that and use a product that, you know, is more environmentally conscious.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that there's the bat and the board. And that board, I think it's classified as a semi-rigid. So it's not rigid like foam, but it is considered semi-rigid. It doesn't compress as much as those bats.
Yeah, and I think obviously the less of the foam products that we can use, the better on many different levels.
This podcast is also brought to you by Upstate Merch, quality-focused screen printing, embroidery, and graphic design shop in Whitney, New York. Over 12 years, Upstate Merch prides themselves on using only the best materials and American-made tools to get your job done. Whether you're looking for giveaway shirts, hats, safety wear, polos, hoodies, whatever you're looking for, top-quality garments outfit your team, Upstate has it covered. If you guys want to work with them and you guys want 10% off your first order, make sure you reach out to them, print at upstatemerch.com, or hit them up, Upstate Merch, on Instagram. Let them know that, or mention the Modern Craftsman podcast, and you'll get that 10% off.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, doesn't he have a podcast also?
He does. I think it's called The Shirt Show.
The Shirt Show. I was trying to find the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been getting a bunch of work stuff printed from them over the years. I obviously don't need that much. I come to them with all of my design files, and then they'll just lay them out and give me proofs, which is nice because then I could see it on different colors. Like I got the girls some pink shirts made.
Nice.
Some baseball t-shirts with pink sleeves, and getting those proofs with my logo on there so I can get, you know, the girls to be like, yeah, that's what we want. That's going to look so cool. But you can do that, or if you don't have design files, I know they have internal people who handle some of the design work for you, so they can help you with that as well. So if you don't have something in place, or if it's for an event or a charity, you know, where you don't have all the graphics done, they can help you as well. So you were basically saying that, you know, you've created this new career path because you set it up that you could kind of go along this career path and not look back, and essentially burnt some bridges so that this was the only thing that you could do. I guess my question was, like, what really made you leave your medical career? Was it just you being unhappy and wanting something more?
Yeah, the best word for it is like opportunity cost. So at that point, I have 3 kids now, but at that point we only had 2. They're little. They're all 2 years apart. At that point, they were roughly, I think, 4 and 3 and 5 maybe. And the whole thing that comes with the hospital gig is it all sounds sexy on paper, but the reality is unless you're like a heart surgeon, you're not making a lot of money. That's first and foremost. Number two, you're working 12 and a half hour shifts. And some people say, yeah, but you have like weekends or you have weekdays off and stuff like that. Yeah, yes and no. But so you end up working like a stretch of like 3 12s, right? Or 4 12s or 3 12s and an 8. And part of our thing is you have to rotate every other weekend. So regardless, every other Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're on shift for 12 and a half hours. And when you have little kids like that, maybe it would be a different story if I had kids in high school and middle school where they got friends and they're doing those stuff. But my kids are like, they're just learning about things. Their brains are just now processing information. So, I was at the hospital when my wife sent me a video when my youngest boy that we've been working on trying to get him to learn how to ride his bike. Finally, like my next door neighbor decided to be with him that day and he's pedaling. And I'm like, great, I'm at the hospital. Or they were at a friend's party and there was a bounce house for the first time. And I'm like, crap, I wasn't there for that. So those opportunity costs, man, they really show themselves, especially when, nobody gave you FU money, right? So like if you're a physician and you're making six figures, you're like, well, yeah, I get it. It's a trade-off. But if you're still bringing in, dude, I'm not even kidding you. I think I was making like $27 an hour. When you're making $27 an hour and you're giving up 12 and a half hours weekends, that's not a fair trade-off to me. So I had to, I'm not going to go petition the hospital and say, hey, you guys need to pay us more. I need to go figure out how to make more.
I think a lot of people do that when they become self-employed, no matter what path they take. I think that you're on an interesting or a potentially dangerous seesaw because you can go from, hey, I'm working so much making this little amount. I want some freedom. I want to make a little bit more money and create my own schedule. And then you end up making more money and you're like, well, I could work more now too. So then you kind of end up working just as much, if not more, as you did, which you're making more money, but you're still missing out on a lot of those critical moments in your life. So I think it's important if you are making that switch to kind of stick to your roots and understand why you made that change in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm fortunate because my job is on the internet and the internet could be anywhere. So even though I'm still putting in fact, when I switched over and you're like, okay, well, I'm my own boss now. What does a good, healthy workday look like? And one thing I carried over was, well, I have to put in 12 hours of work. So in order for me to feel like I earned my day, especially in the beginning, as you are a little nervous and you're going, well, am I working enough? Am I working not enough? What's going to happen 6 months from today? Is the money going to decrease? And so I was like, well, in order to keep my head clear, let's earn my day. 12 hours is what I did at the hospital. I'm going to do 12 hours here. So, but it allowed for me to control it. So instead of working weekends, it made me go, okay, well, then you don't sleep as much. So I would wake up at 5:30 while my kids are still sleeping and I would work. And then we would take them to preschool or whatever, and they're there. And so I have a hard and fast rule. It's like, okay, well, if they're home at 4:30, I have to be done at 4:30. And so I basically cultivated my life and my workflow to be around them, because even though I'm always, as we self-employed guys, we're never not working, right? Even when we're not working, we're still thinking about work. We're still strategizing. We're planning. We're brainstorming. We're solving problems I had while we're still on the couch. At least, a lot of us are. But it allowed for me to be in front of their faces, right? So even though I'm in the office here, they can run in here and be like, hey, Dad, check this out. I'm like, sweet, dude. So that allowed for me to, retain that. Yes, you're still going to work a lot, but at least they're going to see me while I'm working.
Yeah, it's tough because I just spent 10 days with the kids, everyone having COVID, and I'm like, I kind of don't want to be with my kids right now. I take the work. I always tell my wife, I was like, you know what, with all their practices and stuff like that, I was like, I wish these kids need a good stepdad, like nobody like for physical stuff, but just to like help around the house. Yeah, seriously. Once they start sports, it's like, how many times are we going to be at this field this week?
But Tyler, I think going back to your point, like, I feel like that is oftentimes what happens when we go off on our own. And even Alex, you just said it. It's like when you left, you immediately thought in your mind, okay, I have to put 12 hours in. And I think that, the general sense is that we do go into business so we can create more flexibility. And like, there's a great TikTok going around where it's like, it talks about like wanting to be your own boss. It's like, I want to be my own boss so I don't have to work, 12-hour days. And it's like, now I work 24 hours a day. But the point, like, we forget that the whole reason we did this is to get in, to have more flexibility with our life. And that doesn't mean that we're necessarily working less hours, but having the opportunity costs, as you call it, to drop your kids off at school, be home when they get home. And I'm the same way where, I oftentimes will stay at work or stay doing something to a certain time, because then I feel like I've put in enough time today. And it's only been recently where I've tried to be more flexible with that, where it's like, no, if I can my goal personally is like, when I'm at work, I want it to be all work, like 100 miles an hour, and then and get my work done, and then get to a point where it's like, all right, if I'm done, I'm going home, and then I can shut it off. And yes, I'm thinking about work. Yes, I'm thinking about the next day, probably checking my phone, for anything that comes up. But the reality is like, I want to, like you said, be in front of my kids, be there when, yesterday I went home early, or I was home like an hour early, and I was sitting in my truck catching up on emails, and then my kids see me in the truck, and I'm like, well, I mean, definitely not working now. Like, I've been caught red-handed going in the house. And it's like, can you help color? I'm like, yeah, of course I can help color.
Jordan Peterson said that, there's actually, there's a great soundbite out there even circulating on TikTok where it's like, you have your kids for 5 to 6 years. I mean, yeah, they're still your kids afterwards, but the dynamic truly changes. That it sounds like you need like those first 6 years to kind of engrave in their DNA that my dad is not an angry guy. There's no energy of fear around him. He's not constantly yelling at mom, and even that comes from the wound, right? So when the babies are in the womb, they could tell whether or not the mom is under stress because there's maybe some chaos in the household. And I think the same stuff kind of carries over when they're, between 4 and 6 years old, where, I'm stern with my kids. I do yell at them a lot. I am always saying, I'm working, stop, get out of here, I'm working. But at the same time, there's that tough and tender part where you're like, hey, what's up, buddy? What'd you want to do? Did you want to? Yes, we can go launch that rocket. Yes, we can go. Yes, you can have that candy for lunch. And so having that kind of 4 to 6 years to shape that DNA, and then later on, be more strategic, because later on, that's, they're going to start developing their friends. They want to be with their friends, but, you're going to have to find a way how to be involved in their life at that point, as opposed to now.
It's funny. I feel like you and
they're in your life.
I think you and I talked about this on your podcast about being like a good dad, and that is something that it's probably one of the few things that keeps me up at night in fear that I'm not doing something right, and that I'm, that when I am too stern about something, like my wife constantly says, pick your battles, Nick. Like, why are you fighting? He wants a cookie. Just give him the damn cookie. And I'm like, and I go back and forth. I'm like, am I like, and then later on at night when it's like, hey, can I read you a book? No, I don't want you to read me a book. I want mom to read me a book. I don't like you. Get out of my room. And he's 3 years old. And I'm like, I know he doesn't mean it, but my fear is that this is the beginning phase of him actually not liking me. And obviously there has to be this level of, whatever, I'm not sure the right word, but like I have to guide him in the fact that he can't just have cookies. Like, I have to, there are rules that he's got to follow, but it's like, how do I do that in a way where it's like, I'm not just a big asshole that yells at my kids all the time and they frankly just don't like me. Because the reality is like, it's weird. I was trying to talk to my wife about this a couple weeks ago, and the conversation went very much the opposite way I had hoped it would. But I was like, it's so interesting to me, and I would love to understand, like, I think I said, like, I'd love to understand the psychology behind the kids, where when you're not home, they are my best friends. You go out with your girlfriends, the kids are great. They go to bed, they take a shower, they brush their teeth, they're happy, we read books, we laugh, we go to sleep, and they're in bed and they're good. But you're home. It's like they play us, they hate me, they tell me they don't want me in their room. It's like, and and that just opened a whole conversation between my wife and I that like I said, didn't go as planned. But it I guess my point is like, being a man, being a father, running a business, owning a business, developing a business, whatever it is, I know you and I share that. Tyler, you and I have talked about that too. It's like, how can we be a good dad?
Yeah. One thing that kind of resonated with me when you said that they'll want mom, right? Like, because she'll read the book with them, or they basically can tell like who's the one that's like the one that they could twist around their fingers, right? So my wife is like that. She's like a people pleaser with them. So if I said no to something, they're gonna go to mom, right?
That's the best. Love that.
But there's what you said really resonated with me the most about me being in my head about it. When my firstborn was born, Jack, and man, I made all the wrong decisions with him because I remember he was like 1.5 and he was throwing a fit or something like that. And I was like, he's throwing a fit. We need to like nip this in the bud. And then I would try to discipline this like 1.5-year-old. And as like, then the second kid came and then I was a lot easier. And then now I have a daughter. Now I'm like, whatever you want. Right. I had this weird realization that like being a yes dad is really like, there's two things. It's like, if you can cultivate a relationship with your kids where you get up with them in the middle of the night instead of mom, then when they stub their toe, they're going to run to dad. So there's that tough and tender part, the tenderness of a father. And then there is this thing of like, if I realize that if they want that cookie, or you said cookie, but to me it was like candy before bed, I realized it's for me to be a yes dad, by me saying yes, they're not going to grow up to do meth. Like like for some reason it resonated with me. Is like, I'm not going to like ruin them as to be a good, decent human being. But what
by
allowed
giving
for
them a piece of candy, yeah.
Right. Now it's going to be a different story if like, how many times do I need to tell you, or don't raise your voice, or mom, or how many times does mom need to talk to you? Like from that point on, we're going to be tough again. But the candy, the cookie part, like, hey dad, like my wife would go with like do a girls' night, and they'd be like, I'll like surprise them sometimes, and I was like, hey, you guys want to go for a bike ride? It's like dark. They're supposed to be in bed like in 10 minutes, but I'm like, let's ride to the gas station, grab some candy. And I know they're not going to be POSs as they grow up. They're just going to remember dad to be a yes dad. And that's the hardest thing for us to do, is be the yes dad, because we're so afraid we're so afraid to fail them as parents. So that really helped a lot. There's also a book out there. It's called Raising Lions. And the idea behind it is like, we're raising like domesticated cats as our kids. And instead we need to know that they can do really big things in life and they can create huge impacts. But you have to kind of find out how you can have this thing trust you and believe that you are alpha, that you are the law of the land, but that you're also not going to take its life, right? Like the animal kingdom has, where the bear will eat its cubs so it doesn't compete with it. So that tough and tender part has to be this like perfect balance.
Yeah, Nick, we were talking about that. When the wife is away and the kids are completely different, and then as soon as she walks in the door, it's like, why are you guys crying again? You didn't cry for 2 days straight. It's just the way that they're treated differently, and they're so smart from so early on, and they understand like how far they can push. I mean, I even see it with the dogs, where like the dogs will wake my wife up in the morning, but they won't wake me up, just because they know that I don't get angry. I just won't wake up because you want food. Like, I'm just gonna sleep. And they just know what they can get away with. I think so much of it too is where they get and who they get that quality attention from. And I know that my wife is much better about giving them undivided attention, whether it's, hey, look at this with me, and I'm just going to patronize them and be like, yeah, good job, and I'm 30 feet across the room and they know I didn't look at it. And I think, that the girls know that my wife is the one who's really giving them the most attention. So I feel like when it's between the two of us, my kids go to her, because that's just always been the dynamic. And that's something I've struggled with, where I don't want to go through life and look back and say, hey, I never gave them the amount of focus that I should have. And like, I missed out on a lot, they missed out on a lot, but I think that's to me one of the most important things as a parent. Yeah, it's providing structure, it's providing routine, keeping them safe, kind of helping them become young adults, but also I think it's just spending time with them and like engaging with them. And I think, like Alex said at that point, what you do and what you don't do isn't going to really, they're not going to become like crackheads because you didn't do this one day or that one day. I think that if you're a good parent and you're doing what you have to do and you're spending that time, that your kids, they're going to be who they're going to be. But for me, that's what seems to be the most important, is just being able to give them some of your time.
And you know what? I 100% with that. And I think that time, I think we all think that all kids have to have the same kind of quality time, but realizing how different each kid is. So like one of my sons, he's school is very easy to him, and he's very athletic. And so to him, that quality time means throwing a ball, which is like every dad's dream, where it's like, all right, come on, sucker, let's throw this ball around. That's easy. My youngest son, he is more of like this ADD spaz as I am when I was a kid. He didn't know how to use his brain the same way I didn't know how to use my brain. I didn't know how to concentrate. So to him, he needs a lot of help in school, and he loves creativity. He doesn't like sports, but he likes the creativity of like taking a bunch of cardboard, cutting it with a knife, and then taping it together and making an airplane out of it. So I always make a joke that my oldest is going to, play football, and my youngest is going to do like interpretive dance and put pizza on the moon. Like they're such two crazy wired people. So I have to understand that quality time with my youngest doesn't mean let's go throw a ball. Quality time would be like, hey, you want to go get some PVC pipe in the garage and see if we can make some kind of funky looking rocket thing? To him, that's quality time,
In my position, and you guys probably can relate, is like oftentimes it's like I get home from work and my wife is done with them. Like I'm done with the kids. You deal with them. You get them in bed. Yeah. You shower them. You get them bathed. And it's like, and so we're put into this position of like, we need to discipline them, get them, and get them to listen. And that, at the core of it, I think that's what, I'm reacting to that. I'm like, she wants him in bed, I got to get him in bed. And then it's like, why are you so hard on them getting them into bed? Who cares? It's like, you wanted me to get them in bed. And I think that's where I struggle the most, where it's like last night, my wife, we put him, I put the youngest to bed. She goes to bed pretty easy. The other two just like are maniacs. And I'm reading them a book, and my wife's like, all right, I'm going to go downstairs. And I'm like, all right, she's done. She's checked out. Like, I'll do the book. I'll get them in bed. And I just end up sitting outside the room, and they came out literally 6 times. And I'm like, guys, it's time for bed. You have to get in bed. My oldest is like, I'm itchy. I'm like, you're not itchy. Go to bed. So they go to bed, and they don't come out of that room for 5 minutes. I go downstairs, and I get into something, and then all of a sudden my daughter's downstairs, and she's crying, and she's looking at my wife, and Meg's like, what's wrong? She's like, I'm itchy. And she pulls up her PJs, and she's literally covered in hives from head to toe. And I'm like, fuck, man. Like, here I am, like, she's like telling me, like, obviously like being a little like nightmare, like going to bed, but then there's a serious thing, and it's like dad didn't care. So here I am asking mom. So it's like, and I know I'm overanalyzing the situation for like the big picture, but it's the same thing, like the whole candy thing, like whatever, Red 40 that's in candy. Like literally, it's like, I guess it's banned in Europe and stuff like that, but it literally, if I come home and my kids are acting a particular way, I will know, not even sugar, it's like straight up, did they have something with red food coloring in it? And it's like, yeah, they had pink cupcakes today at school. I'm like, they're fucking assholes. Like they're straight up, they're acting like assholes. Whoa. But it's like, in the big picture, you're right. Like, why do, like, they're not, like, just because they're doing, because they're doing Red 40 doesn't mean they're going to do meth, right?
Well, I didn't realize, like, I mean, every kid's completely different, but yeah, I mean, that's wild that you could tell your kids' attitude based off of like what they had at lunch, right? That's crazy.
But I think that's what, I mean, my wife and I talk all the time about not other kids, like, that they're bad, but, we watch how our friends parent their kids,
Yeah.
and it's like when they're being terrible, it's like, here, have a lollipop. It's like it's like, this isn't no.
Yeah.
And I just keep to I don't say, I'm
Yeah.
definitely not saying anything, but I'm like, your kid's being a little asshole because you're feeding it sugar and it can't process this stuff.
Yeah.
And
body's
it's just
like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, it's like running around like picking up bowling balls at the bowling alley and chucking them at kids. It's like, no, it's not that your kid's bad. It's that it like the diet. It's just straight up the food. But I don't know.
I think
I
there is
struggle with
hope
it.
though. Like how
Totally.
Marley's what, 6? 5?
5.
How old's your oldest, Alex?
8.
Yeah, so my oldest is 8. I have 2 girls, and our youngest is 5. And the 8-year-old is just at the point where I can have like a semi-adult relationship with her. And like we have stuff that we can do. I'll try and go out once a week with her and take her in the woods and go ride dirt bikes. And it's like we have this thing and this connection that does not involve her sister. It doesn't involve my wife. It's something that I enjoy, that she enjoys, and we have like this bonding experience that is like an adult relationship. And that completely changed things, because it's really tough if you're not the type of dad where, like my kids want to get on the floor and play with forts, and it's like I cannot disconnect mentally from everything else in my life if you want me to play forts. Like I need something that's going to really consume me. And I know if they ask me to sit build a fort in the other room, that I'm going to be preoccupied mentally. So we're like at the age with the oldest now where we can do these engaging activities or go for a ride or go for a walk and have a conversation where it's like, okay, I'm good at this. Maybe I wasn't the best dad when it was like, hey, can we go make stew outside? But now that like they're at the age where they want to do big kid stuff, it's so much easier to be that parent and not have all of these regrets or feel as if, you're missing out on their lives, it's just been nice to kind of see them get a little bit older and less little kids and less running towards my wife. And now like we have a relationship that I'm actually feel like I'm doing a good job kind of feeding.
Yeah. And, there's also definitely a separation. It becomes harder when it's like, is your oldest the girl or is your oldest a boy, right? Like,
they're both girls.
Both girls. And Nick, your oldest is a boy or girl?
Girl, boy, girl.
Yeah. So that's difficult because my 2 of my oldest boys, they're boys. And then I have a third one and she's the girl. And it's like, we were talking about parents, right? Parenting, when you see other people, they have an asshole of a kid and they give them, a lollipop or whatever. And my wife and I, we rolled our eyes the same way. And because we were more like no nonsense parenting, and it's strictly because it's boys, right? Because boys, you got to be a little bit tougher on them. But when you cultivate this whole thing where like, we don't say their first, middle, and last name 3 times as a warning, right? We're not going to say Jack Oliver, no, it's like, hey, mom said it twice. You get smacked upside the head. You sit right here. One thing we cultivated was, I remember I learned from one of my buddies, David. I always try to hang out with people that are a little bit older than me. So I'm not hanging out with a bunch of people my age who don't know what they're doing either. And he was telling me about his daughter, which how he disciplines her. And they have a pool in the backyard. And his daughter at that point was like maybe 9. And he was telling me how obviously he's not going to swat her butt to punish her. But what he did, he taught me that you have to find out, you have to teach your kids that they have freedom, certain level of freedoms they get to enjoy. If it's an older kid, they get to walk to their friend's house and hang out and come back at a certain time. If it's a younger kid, they get to maybe watch a certain show, whatever that freedom is. And then constantly having the conversation is these are freedoms, and the more I can trust you, the more freedoms I will give you. But if you lose my freedom, then it's going to suck for you. And so when it comes to like bedtime routines or whatever, it's like if I'm yelling more than once or twice on them, I take away something that they value of freedom. So, obviously swapping butts doesn't work anymore, but I'll be like, okay, guess what? You don't get to do Call of Duty on the weekend. Congratulations. You lost your privilege of playing video games on the weekend. And like that destroys him because like right now that's his world. And it really, really works. So just cultivating that like reward system, but it's a freedom thing. It's like, 'cause I'm hoping that when they turn 16, 18, and they say, "Hey, can I go to my friend's house?" You're like, "Sure." You have my trust. You have more freedoms. But then you fuck up, you're gonna lose that freedom. And I hope your
Yeah.
brain registers that I want to retain these freedoms.
The hardest part about that is when you pull the freedoms, it just makes your life harder. I mean, long term,
Yeah.
it's supposed to make it easier, but it's like,
Yeah.
it was like, no TV tomorrow when you get home from school. And I'm like, I literally cannot get anything done if I can't just be like, go watch TV for an hour. Oh, so
Yeah,
it's
facts.
like,
Facts.
I like don't want to because I'm like, oh God, if I tell them they can't be on the iPad, that means that they're just going to be like a pain in the ass and I won't get anything done. It's so hard.
I started shaking them down for money too. So like, I'm again, the two oldest boys are the two oldest boys are 7 and 8, and when they're younger, when they're like 4 or 5, when they do chores like, hey, go take out the trash, or hey, if groceries were delivered to the front door, bring it in. They'll get like a star, magnet star, and that star is 25 cents, and after like a month, they'll probably get like $2 or something like that. They spend it on candy.
Sure.
But the older they're getting, they're into video games and Fortnite and all that stuff. They want to spend it on either RC cars or package upgrades on Call of Duty or whatever. Meth. What is that? What's that chemical in candy?
R40.
Red 40.
Yeah. And so what would happen is now, so if it's middle of the week and we don't want to take away their screens, like last night, my middle boy he threw this fit towards mom because she's like, unload the dishwasher, and he lost his mind for whatever reason he did. I don't know, candy, whatever. And so I was like, cool, give me $1. Because now it's like he takes out the trash, that's $1. If he goes gets the newspaper, or not the newspaper, who has those anymore? But go get the mail, that's $1. So I'll be like, congratulations, give me your $1. Like they're losing this thing. It costs them money, and it works too.
Yeah, we just started doing that with the kids with chores too, where they're starting to earn money just to make. I'm like, you guys are definitely at the age you can do this, and now they want to buy watches, so they're trying to save up to buy watches. And Tilly came,
the Omega Speedmaster.
Dude, Tilly came in the other day with. She's our youngest. She came in with like 2 pages, and she's like, yeah, so you owe me $37. And I was like, for what? She's like, I gave you 2 kisses this morning, a hug, then I put the plate in the sink. And I was like, no, like, you don't just get money for doing all that. Like, we have to have a discussion about this. And she's like, so I didn't get $37? And I was like, no, I'm not going to pay you because you gave me a kiss. Like, maybe if I specifically say, like, I'll give you $1. But she had this whole list, and I was like, "No, that's not how it works." Silly, sorry.
My middle boy pulled the same card this weekend. He goes, "We're in the hot tub," and he goes, "Dad, I bet you I can hold my breath. No, Dad, if I hold my breath under the water for 1 minute, you have to owe me $1." I was like, "No, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
You have to make a bet. Like, just because you can do what I can do."
Yeah, I love how kids justify it. They just they make the rule, and it's like, and you're like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's like, that's how I want it to work though. And they're like, no, I know that's how you want it to work, but that's not how this works.
Yeah, I'll be like, can you clear that table? Until he's like, I'll do it for $2. And I was like, no. Like, I didn't ask you if you want to clear the table for $2. I told you to clear the table. And she's like, well, if you're not going to pay me, then I'm not going to do it. And I was like, also doesn't work like that. Like, you don't, you're not getting this.
All of a sudden they have like workman's comp, and they have unionized and all that stuff. Yeah, my boy did that yesterday, because before the agreement was, because we have one of those trash, the trashes in the kitchen is like the pull-out drawer that has 2 compartments, right? The front and the back one. And before, the agreement was like, it's when they did the star system, it'd be like each one gets 2 stars. So between the 2 of them, like there'll be, 50 cents. But then I switched. I was like, no. This is like, for each one of you take a trash bag out, that's not $1 worth. Like, you need to put a little more effort. So I'm like, from now on, it's a $1 for both bags. And he goes, then I'm not doing it. I go, congratulations, you're doing it for free now.
Yeah.
It's like little asshole.
It's in the moment, it's so infuriating. I look back at it, and it's very comical. But a lot of times when you're like at your wit's end and this is happening, it's so frustrating.
I also don't know where they learn some of these words. Like they'll use like big words, and like I forget what Reed said yesterday. But we had dinner. and he just like he used a really big word. He's now 3, really big word perfectly in a sentence, and me and my wife were like, and he was negotiating something, of course, and it's like you can't. I'm like, I can't even help but laugh. Like we're like, I haven't used that word ever.
Did your
And here he
3-year-old
is.
did your 3-year-old say he was flabbergasted?
No, he didn't say flabbergasted, but it was just like I forget what it was, but I'm like, where does he learn this stuff? And it's TV.
It's wild. There
It's
when they get into like YouTube channels, like content creators that are like specifically making these obnoxious like teeny boppers, and they're
Yeah.
like, so like you'll hear my boys will go like, man, that's so sus. I'm like, sus. They're like, yeah, it means
Oh
like
my gosh.
suspicious. I was like, shut up, dude, sus. So I'll start messing with them. I'll be like, I'll use it completely out of context. Be like, man, I went yesterday there, and man, it was super sus. They're like, Dad, you're not using it right. I was like, yeah, dude.
Yeah, I found
Jesus.
I've kind of drawn the line with them as far as watching YouTube stuff. I mean, if it's something that they're learning something, but there's so much garbage on there of these kids like playing with dolls that they're like, I'm like, you have dolls of your own. You don't need to watch somebody else play. I'm like, you cannot. If you want to watch TV, you could watch a movie. You could watch something educational. You could watch, on
Right.
YouTube, learn how to do something. But you're not just gonna. And I let them do almost anything. Like there's rules, and they're well behaved and they're responsible. They're not the type of kids that need you to be on them all the time. But I draw the line mostly because if I'm in the room with them, I just can't stand that in the background.
It's annoying.
Oh my
Yeah,
god,
it's like
it's so
This
frustrating.
show- and they'll zone like it's like Blippy. Like Blippy, it's super educational. Like he's super annoying to adults, but he's super educational. And then they watch this other show, and it's like this blob, and it's just like this guy that doesn't make. He like grunts, and he doesn't make. There's no talking in the entire show. And it's like he turns into like a golf ball, and he gets whacked by a golf club, and it's like, and then there's no context to the show. They're not learning anything.
Have you ever seen Ryan?
And it's like, no.
Oh, he's
Ryan's
like,
toy review, is that the guy that opens up toys?
yeah.
Oh, the toy review
Well, he
thing?
no, he has like a toy line in Target and Walmart now, but like
He's like the most viewed kid on
yeah,
YouTube.
he's like
or
this,
something
like
that, yeah.
some Asian kid, like his parents are both Asian. They make these just like terrible YouTube videos, and you could tell they make a ton of money from them.
Oh, Ryan's Toys Reviews made $11 million in 1 year.
Yeah, that's probably
Yeah.
who this is, and it's just
Yeah.
like what it's turned into is so bad that I'm like, girls, you can't watch that because I don't want to basically be like perpetuating this kid's lifestyle to continue making these videos because it's so
Right.
bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he's okay if you don't watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, my 7-year-old, he's watching all these, like, again, these teeny boppers, and they're doing these obnoxious things where they're like, we're giving away 100 iPhones and all this stuff. And so my boy has this like disconnection with reality because he's like, they know their dad does YouTube, and they'll be like, Dad, you should give away a Tesla on your channel. I go, do you know that's not real? Like, do you know that it's just like, it's staged? They're making it look like they truly gave away a Tesla. They didn't give away a Tesla. That's just to make you kids look like they're fooling you guys. Like, I'll watch some of these videos, and they're like, it was like Preston Styles, I think his thing is. And they just, these obnoxious kids, again, millions of views. And what did he do? Oh, he'll go like, all right, they'll do the video, and they'll be like, okay, make sure right now, stop what you're doing, go in the comment section and give us 3 fire emojis. And my boy would be like, Dad, we got to go do it right now. I go, hold on a second. You don't know how this works. And then they'll be like, leave a comment, the fire emoji, and so we can feature you at the end of this video. And I go, dude, he already shot the video. It's recorded. It's uploaded. How is he going to go and add your stuff to this video in the end? Like, it's not real time. And so just like this disconnection from what reality is. And
He's like, I don't know what you just said, but go leave the fire emoji.
No, but seriously, those fire emojis.
Well, Alex, let's go back to that. Like, so we talked about why you left the health career, and you got into social media with building. You had no really previous experience. You started learning it through social media, and then you decided to start filming and sharing basically what you were learning in order to get free tools. We've established that, and then it grew into something where it was pretty substantial. To like you had mentioned early on, is that no one explained to you what you could do with YouTube, or what you could make, or how you could make money. And I'd love to unpack that a little bit here, because again, just to reiterate, like, there's so many people in this industry that struggle to make money. And I think when there's other opportunities for people to make money and share what they're doing, I think is super interesting. And even for us, like, we're not doing YouTube necessarily to make money. We make a little bit of ad money, but we're not making nearly as much as the majority of people out there that I know. And we're doing it because we want to share what we're doing and create a brand and create awareness. But you're doing it solely as income. So kind of unpack that. What is that like? What's your day look like? How are you getting these brand deals? How are you deciding what project to do? Things like that.
Yeah. That's a good question. Definitely a loaded question. So the way it goes right now is I use my mornings for emails and planning and all that stuff. In the very beginning stages, I did what I would consider like code calling, but via emails. And I would slide into a brand's DMs. Craig is one of them, right? Just for example. And I'll be like, hey, can you connect me with your marketing and media person? I'd love to create some content together. And then connect me with somebody. Usually it's the same person. And I'd say, I'd love to make a YouTube video with making this kind of product or project. And we'd kind of circle around it. We find a price point, and then sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes they're like, we'll just give you the free thing, and that sucks. And then
how are you establishing that price point?
Oh, that's another great one. I get, because there's no market about it, and some
Right.
marketing agencies that are third party between content creators and brands, they'll say, well, based off of your, let's say it's Instagram, based off of your last 5 Instagram posts, the number of followers times divided
Sure.
by whatever against your likes, and that, they'll say you're in this bracket, and that means you charge X per post, or because of your YouTube channel is this many followers, this is the going
Sure.
rate. That's not a thing. That's just a way to that's just a Ponzi scheme.
Right.
So really kind
That's
of started,
basically showing that someone made
They're
a
trying
formula
to put a
that
metric to
they
it.
can back into it, take the 10% and move on.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of started in the very beginning when I just kind of threw a number out. And I think the first time when I was still blogging, not getting anything, I would say, I'll do it for $1,000. And then they'll be like, well, our budget is so-and-so based on your size. And I'm like, okay, we can make that work. And then after enough people said $1,000, then you start raising the number, and you kind of eventually, as your audience is growing and as you're working with more and more people, you just kind of start raising the number until somebody says no. And then you realize there's a hard no. And then at that point you go, okay, so this is my going market rate. Then you'll make friends in the industry who are creating content in the same realm, right? Jameson from Rogue Engineer, Jen Woodhouse, all these people that we go to these conferences together, you kind of talk to them like off the record, be like, hey, by the way, what do you charge? Yeah, I'm pretty close to that. And you kind of figure out, okay, that's your going rate. But then when you finally figure out what works, like what really works on your channel, like that a big home renovation is going to do way better views than you building a coffee table. So then you go, and your channel starts growing. At that point on, you throw a bigger number, and then because now you're a brand, so like there's a lot of DIY people who will make coffee tables and dining tables, but if you're one of the few accounts that is doing home renovation stuff, then they want you for the sake of home renovation. So like now, we just did a brand deal with a mortgage refinancing company, right? Because they're like, we don't care about advertising to a coffee table person. We need to advertise to adults who have homes with the highest potential for them to click the link and apply to renovate their home. So at that point, you can put a higher dollar amount because they want you for your branding and not only your following. So that's where the numbers come from. In terms of how do we operate in terms of creating content, it's Monday through Friday. Mornings are computer work for these negotiations. A lot of social media editing. Now you can monetize on Facebook and TikTok and all those little sub platforms. And then we film till about 3-4 that day, and we just keep doing that over and over.
Alex, I think I told you this on your podcast. you are always on my Facebook.
Yeah.
Like it is lit. I load it and your video is like every time I load it, and I'm like, I've never even been to Alex's website.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have a pixel on me. He's not tracking me. He's just showing up constantly. And Tyler, I texted him. I was like, what are you paying for Facebook ads? Because I need to know your budget. He's like, I don't pay anything.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell? Like, and you attributed it to the fact that you've figured out like what people like in from the setup, where it's like you'll do, hey, how to build a fire pit. And when you watch the video, you're not really walking them through how to build it. It's just this like time lapse of you building a fire pit. And it's like it's almost as though I watched it waiting for you to tell me how to do it, and then all of a sudden it was done and you were sitting around it with a fire in it, and I was like, that's cool. I was like, damn it, I just watched a 7-minute video about how to build a fire. I don't even know how to build it.
Yeah, there's a harsh reality that a lot of content creators, let's say YouTubers or DIYers, don't realize is that you start the conversation, you're like, well, I'm a YouTuber, or I'm a Instagrammer, or I'm a DIYer. But then you have to change your perspective, because you have to understand that you're a content creator. So your job is to not educate. You're not the professional in this. So like, you're a contractor, right? You're a builder. You have an industry. You have a professional carpenter that works with you and for you, right? He's the professional, and he's the voice that has the authority in knowing, is this done correctly or incorrectly. That's not my goal. So my goal is not to be like, hey guys, this is this is how you do it properly. No, it's more like, hey, I've done this a few times. Maybe I haven't. I've made mistakes, and I'm going to show you. I'm just going to document that. So as a content creator, the only thing I'm doing is competing for people's attention. That's all I'm doing. So whether it be the pace that you were watching that Facebook video, the topic of discussion, that's strictly because somewhere in the algorithm saw that you maybe hovered over another channel's, outdoor project, whatever it is, and they say, totally. Nick likes that stuff. So then it takes me, who creates content in that world, and I just get a little bit better and better with every project of like, how do I retain attention? And all my analytics tell me, hey, there's a drop off here. Well, what happened there? Oh, because you put an intro there. Okay, let's cut out the intro. Now we're retaining that audience attention even better. Well, what about this one? Why did that perform better? Well, because that was at a faster pace, and this is a slower pace. So all of that is just competing for people's attention.
Do you find that part of the job enjoyable?
Yeah, I really do, because you see the success, right? So meaning there's an action to reaction. It's almost like a little bit of psychology, right? So you go, well, okay, so I have a few videos where, like right now, I'm really obsessed with thumbnails, right? Because the whole point of YouTube is click, which is a thumbnail, catches their attention, watch, which is the pace of that video, and then engage is, did somebody leave a comment down below? All of that is, you have to kind of learn more and more about human psychology and human behavior, whether it's certain kind of colors in the thumbnail, was the thumbnail somewhat not clickbaity, but provocative, right? So like I did a giant shower remodel, and it's like me in a towel around my waist, right? In the shower thing, super, provocative, dumb, whatever. And so my buddies would be like, "Oh, that's all for the girls, huh?" And I was like, "Dude, 87% of my audience was male that watched." I
was gonna say it's still 80% guys that click that.
Yeah, dude. So it's just learning human behavior, and I think that's fun because you get to tweak it, and it really works. I love that movie or documentary, Social Dilemma on Netflix. They do a great job breaking it down, where people go, what do they resonate with? Is it music? Is it pace? Is it colors? Is it edits? All that is fascinating, and so that's the part that I really enjoy.
Yeah,
I think
for me,
go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it's, I guess that's why I'm not a content creator. Like that would be the part of the job where it's like, yeah, I got into this because I enjoyed making the content, and then this is like the part of the job that I don't. It's like the paperwork to our business, Nick, where it's like I like Tyler, doing the work, but I don't like the paperwork.
I would argue, because the few times that I got into like the technical side, like the back end of it, it's really interesting, and it's interesting because you can actually see the you see the reaction to it. where it's like when you pay attention, if you run like a Facebook ad, it's like you can get really in depth with like who you're targeting. And I messed around with it for a few months, and I took a couple courses like online, and I was like, I really want to understand how this works. Like same thing, I watched The Social Dilemma, and people are like, this is freaky. I'm like, no, this is amazing. This is how I can change my business. And at that time, I wanted to change who we were marketing towards and what we were marketing, and it was immediate. I was like, all of a sudden, people were reaching out to me like, hey, I saw your ad on Facebook, and I'm like, yeah, you fit the exact persona of the person that I was trying to target.
Yeah.
And I think, and when you start, Tyler, I will agree in this sense where it's like, it's slightly annoying, especially when you're like, oh, this is a great photo or a great video, and it's like, I feel like a lot of people are going to get value out of this, and then it's like you see the analytics, or even if you just look at quickly the likes, it's like no one even watched this.
Yeah.
And then you post like some stupid video, and it's like a million people watch it, and it's like, no, I didn't want, like, that was just supposed to be like a filler. But I think that it's a full-time job, obviously, like as you're doing now, Alex, but I think that is the interesting side, is how you can actually manipulate what people see and how people react to it by those micro changes. That, I guess what I'm trying to get to is the fact that you can attribute this to how you want to build your business or grow your business, where it's like, if I wanted to only build purple homes, I could create content around building purple homes and do it in a way where it's like, now I'm the purple house guy. And it's like, and now like I'm targeting people that want to build a purple, like that. It's to that level. It's to that level that you can curate this stuff, and knowing that it, is just super interesting.
Yeah, and when you said, Tyler, that it's like, you said it, that part of the business is like the paperwork, the part that you don't like. It's different because you'd almost imagine me building something that's the meat and potatoes, right, of the industry. But the reality is because I'm competing for attention, it's not necessarily building something. It's just capturing it where that's the meat and potatoes, right? And so it becomes really exciting to go, well, I could either create 4 big projects a month and document that and put that out, or I can create 1 or 2 big projects a month and then really nerd out on how to capture the most amount of eyes on this and have this pay more dividend than it would by me putting out 4 videos, right? So it's like, in a way, it is working smarter than harder, but at the same time, I'm just, that's my bread and butter, is competing for attention.
Sure. I guess when I look, I'm not within this industry, and looking at it from the outside, that makes complete sense. And like, in order to kind of scale what you're doing and get the eyes and get the attention, like, that's a necessary evil. I guess I always thought in my mind, which might, it might be just a fairy tale, where it's like content creation, like these people who are doing this stuff, it's because, they're makers, they want to make this, they want to do that. And a lot of times, from a business perspective, that's just not the right mindset to have. And it's interesting to hear, and it makes perfect sense that like a lot of people who have really large followings and make a ton of money doing that, like, it's not necessarily about, like, artistically kind of making something that they can stand for, as much as like, hey, we know what's going to get people's attention and how this is going to work, and that's how we're going to get paid. Which, I mean, that would make sense, like, as to why I'm not in the content creation business. Like, I don't understand that. It doesn't make sense to me, and I'm looking at it as an outsider. And it's just crazy to hear how much goes into that, aside from like, you see these big accounts where it's like, hey, it's a woodworker who has a huge following, and it's like, they're probably only making that project because they know it's going to get a ton of views.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the real exciting part that happens is when you get a good finger on the pulse of figuring out what's your voice and what works in terms of content, and then figuring out how does that benefit you even more. So like, I'm at the point where when it comes to budgets, all of these projects, they're completely funded by the brand. And not only does that content work, meaning it's home renovation stuff, but it's also, adding to the equity of my own home,
Yeah.
right? So I don't have to say like, in order for this piece of content to work, for the brand to sponsor this, I have to paint my living room purple to capture the attention. I was able to to stay in my lane, to figure out, okay, I'm gonna both make a paycheck and I'm gonna have another brand pay to remodel my home. And that's, I guess, that's the most exciting part, really, to me.
Yeah, and I mean, from a business perspective, that makes the most amount of sense. I even look at it from, Nick's, like what Nick does as far as putting out content for the industry, and I feel like Nick takes a very authentic approach to it, and he is looking to be that professional and to kind of put very authentic, accurate information out there. And like, not a knock on Nick, but you don't have the massive YouTube following, and it's like you aren't like kind of structuring your content to hit massive numbers.
Right. And that's what, Doug and I talk about constantly, where it's like, thumbnails, like Doug will change around thumbnails constantly. And like, we'll have a video that will do, 5,000 views, and he'll change a thumbnail 6 months from now, and all of a sudden it will hit 500,000 views. And it's like, what the hell happened? He goes, I changed the thumbnail.
Yeah.
And, but I think that there is potential, and this is where I think, those that are listening, like there's content creators and then there's contractors and craftsmen. But there's the in between where I think that I probably fall in between, where I'm building, but I'm also creating content, but I'm not really going all in on the content. I'm basically just producing and putting it out there, where if I had more time, or if I had someone dedicated to it, we could rip the analytics out and say, hey, Nick, like you're dropping off, like you said. I made a note of it. When you said the intro, I'm like, I wonder if our intro, like I wonder if people just want a cold open, where it's like media into it and then add the intro later on.
Yeah, so a lot of these, if you look at that bell curve, it goes like this, and every video, and then it flattens out, it goes down. And this drive right there, YouTube, for it to register it as a view, you have to be 30 seconds of watch time. And so the name of the game is, how do you get straight into it to make a person goes, oh, okay, never mind, he just captured me, I'm watching this.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, my point is, if I had some time or someone dedicated, like we could rip into the analytics and probably start crushing views and crushing growth on YouTube, where it's like we've just kind of sustained this like 1,000 followers per month, and just kind of, month after month we're growing, and people are like, oh my God, why don't more people follow this? I'm like, because we're obviously not grabbing the attention. We're building a great base. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos, but it isn't based around content creation. It's simply based on let's communicate and share what we're doing and what we're learning.
Yeah, it's interesting to see like what people who understand the algorithm and how to kind of engage people, what they can do with, and like my mind is going towards people on YouTube that have like millions of followers, and it's them pranking their grandmom or just like doing stupid shit, and it like making how much money, and it's like they understand how to work this, and like it's not anything useful to anyone. And like,
well, it's like TikTok right now. It's like the most popular things are these stupid dances, and it's like, and I rag on it, but then I'll watch it. Or it's like they have a viral sound, where it's like there'll be a viral sound, and then you watch every one that has that sound, because you want to know how they took that sound and did something different with it. It's like they didn't. They did the same exact thing, but I can find myself watching it.
There's and I don't know if this is out of just growing up as an adult or become probably more attributed to being a parent, but you'll see a lot of these people who don't have kids, and they'll make some cringy, embarrassing stuff that gets attention. You got to give them that credit. They got people's attention, and they went viral through that, right? But then you realize that one day you will have kids, and are like, it's like you sharing that you used to be a stripper with your kids, right? You're like, is that part of
I
your
haven't
life that you're
told
gonna
him
be
yet.
proud of? It's like I see, I'm so captivated by, consuming content that people that are not in my industry, the type of content they create. For example, I love watching these guys that are taking these boats that are covered in just that have been abandoned, and they're like restoring them to be like brand new. Like they get millions of views,
Yeah.
or van life video, or all these other stuff. But there's also people out there who do dumb, stupid shit, or it's a chick that's half naked, and you go, well, cool, you're viral now. That's awesome. You got an audience. But
What are you gonna
one
do with
day
it?
you'll be a mom. One day you'll be a dad. And do you want to be known as that guy, the guy that ran across the soccer field, butt naked? But now, cool, you got a huge YouTube following.
I'm
Yeah,
so
it's
glad that they didn't have this shit when we were growing up. Like
yeah,
there
but I don't think you would have been any different.
Yeah, but like I definitely ran around naked at some point in my adolescent teen years, and it would have been definitely not gone viral. But I just think like the way that you can put stuff out on the internet right now, especially having 2 daughters, is like very scary. And I'm super glad that we could not document. Like I was a junior in high school when I got a cell phone, and like you didn't have cameras on it. It was when T9 Word had just like that was primitive text messaging. It was a phone for a phone's sake, and like now you can document anything that you want. I'm glad that we couldn't.
And it's the first thing people do
I know.
too. It's like when something's happening, there was a fight, and there's this video that came up close by to me, and this car literally drove through McDonald's parking lot and slammed a kid on a scooter over a curb, through a fence, and into the street because they were fighting. And it's like,
there's like
and
6
someone's filming
views.
it.
I mean, 6 different vantage points.
Yeah, everyone is standing there in the restaurant across the street with their camera going. It's like, not are any of you calling 911? Are any of you going to see if the kid that got thrown through a fence? Okay, like that's the immediate reaction.
Yeah, I think also, Tyler, to your point, you said you're glad that that stuff didn't exist when we were kids. I think by it not existing, I think it made us more tougher that now that it's in our hands, because you have these kids that are getting online bullied, and they don't know how to handle it. Versus when we were kids, somebody calls you a pussy in front of your face, you punch them in the throat, right?
Yeah.
And so now when somebody calls you a pussy as an adult on your YouTube channel, you go, F that guy. Versus these kids, they just don't know how to handle it. They don't know that,
But there's also no filter. It's like an adult is on a kid's page, bashing them. Like, a 30-year-old's like, hey, 8-year-old, you're a little pussy. And it's like, that's the issue. That is a big issue. I think that's a whole nother topic. But, what was I going to say? From going back, like, we're getting close here to the end, but I wanted to talk about just leaving a health, like you said you were making 6 figures in healthcare, and now you've been able to sustain, and you don't have to disclose the numbers exactly, but like, what has content allowed you to do? Like, are you back to making what you were? Are you making more? Like, how, what is your income like now that you're a full-time content creator?
Well, I think you just said that I made 6 figures working in the hospital. I did not. I made 50 grand a year working in the hospital.
I get you. At one point, you talked about 6 figures in the hospital. Maybe that was
if you were
potential.
a physician.
Because you said $27 an hour. That's right.
Yeah. No. I don't know how to answer that question. It's done really, really well for me. And again, I don't know how to answer this question without kind of divulging or being obnoxious about it. But
I guess give
yeah.
Good. I'll let you finish.
So the money that's being made on YouTube it's yes. Am I making probably more money than some physicians? Yes. This year has been really good to me. The difference happens where it's like you have a physician that has a really important role that's to save a life, right? And then you have me who's just documenting, stupid builds to my own house. Why am I making either the same money or better? Well, it's because that physician has an exchange that's happening between one person. So it's a one-on-one exchange. And what I do, I'm having an exchange with millions of people at once, right? And so if the doctor wants to make even more money than that, he has to do a seminar or whatever where people buy tickets. And now that exchange, that transaction is happening across larger lines.
Unless he starts a YouTube channel.
I was going to say, unless he's filming.
Yeah. Yeah.
People would watch that. No, like, you get someone to sign a release. It's like, all right, open heart surgery live on YouTube tomorrow.
100%. So yes, there's really good money. In fact, I was talking to my wife about this because she has a business here locally in town in Boise. She's a stager, and she also has an internet social media presence that kind of helps promoting the marketing aspect of it. But she knows that her dollar amount is per job is for staging is like this much. And then in terms of her competition around here, she's usually about maybe a few $100 shy of the highest, grossing local stager. Well, when you turn it into internet money, then you don't have a cap anymore. You could charge whatever you want to a brand if they want you as a brand, a personal brand. And at the same time, you're able to stretch that content between monetizing not only the brand putting that money in your pocket, but now you have advertisements on YouTube, and the longer videos, the more advertisements that go there. You have advertisements on Facebook. You have now TikTok that's paying you. Now you have Instagram Reels that's paying you. And then smaller groups underneath that who are promoting Amazon affiliate links, merch sales, Then you have other companies that are reaching out to you who have like reposting accounts like on Facebook, and they'll license out your video. So they'll say, can we purchase a license for reposting on our account for a fee of this? And then so you're able to kind of trickle it down further.
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about it that way, where, I mean, even if it's an exchange of your time, you're being able to kind of spread that out. Even one person, two people, you're able to spread that, and your outreach is so much greater than kind of exchanging your time for money between one person, 5 people, a dozen people. Yes. And at that point, it's like everything's magnified. Your outreach is magnified. The potential opportunities are magnified. It's one of the things we're also doing that we're working on right now. It's going to launch at the end of this month. Is I took this out of I don't know if you listened to that Mr. Beast podcast on Rogan.
I just listened to it last weekend.
So we started a channel, and it's getting launched end of this month, where we're doing Mr. Build It in Espanol. So basically, we're taking our top grossing videos and having them dubbed over with voice actors, which they send me a sample, which is cool the way they do it. You're like, as you're talking, that translation is talking. And then when there's a pause, maybe you're like hopping into something, that's a pause as well. Like, it's so natural. And it's a no-brainer, because you look at only 4% of the world speaks English.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's wild. So why not take that content and, cross promote it on other languages?
Yeah, this is where it kind of trips me up, where, and Nick, like you were saying, there's so many other opportunities doing what we do to make a living and make alternate source of income. But it's like, in order to do this well, or do what Alex is doing well, it has to be a full-time job for somebody. It's not like,
agree.
You can still have what you're doing, but you're not gonna be successful in doing that if like building's your primary, like you have to have people in place there.
Totally, but this is where, like, this is the supplemental things that we can do.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like the little pieces, like, hey, maybe you make an extra $1,000 a month that covers your car payment.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you can't. I think where I'm kind of going with that is that if your heart's in building, like, and then you have this content creation kind of side business of that, it's almost as if you need to put people in place that just eat, sleep, breathe content creation. Because if your heart is in that, I want to create, I want to be a maker, I want to like artistically express myself, you're not going to be fulfilled on the content creation side, because so much of it is like the business aspect of it and understanding the analytics and all of that stuff. So it's almost like if you want to do that, maybe get to a point where you can start hiring people who understand how to do that to help you, because it's like kind of getting into the weeds of something that you didn't get into it in the first place for.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And I know I'm repeating myself. It's just that those other unique opportunities where it's like you can expand on it and dabble into sharing your knowledge. And I think like the fact that, Alex, you took it from, not being in this industry, learning and then documenting and sharing it. It's, a lot of people want to learn. A lot of people want to understand how to do things. And oftentimes, and I know this is a big fault of our videos, is like, it's frankly just too complex for the majority of people, where it's like the people that are watching our videos are other builders or people that are doing this on a regular basis. So when I start talking about a capillary break on top of a concrete footing, people are like, dude, I don't care. Like, tell me how to make a concrete bowl.
Yeah, you need to put like a wiener that pops out of a cake when your grandmom goes to blow the candles out or something.
I heard half of that. I'm just gonna leave it there. So.
You heard wiener?
I heard bowl. Wiener and cake. So, but it that it's. There's so much opportunity. There's so many people out there that want to learn this stuff, and as simple as as filming yourself and walking through the steps in which something could take. Everyone has a different take on putting out content. Like I referenced the TikTok thing earlier, and I'm sure a bunch of people are shaking their head like, dude, I don't watch TikTok. I'm not on. But my point in that reference is that everyone, like, there's so many things that go viral and everyone has their own rendition of it. And oftentimes it's the exact same, but for whatever reason, we as humans still want to watch it and want to understand it. And it could be the same thing here. It's like, yeah, there's thousands of YouTube channels for woodworking, but it's everyone does something different.
Yeah, for sure. So. There's definitely a voice that you have to find, right? It's and you can't say, well, nobody would be interested in watching X, Y, Z. True. I mean, if you shot it, sure, nobody would be. But if somebody else shot it and they knew how to have a voice around it, there's a reason why you take a guy who's an uneducated guy like Casey Neistat, meaning like did not have a degree from anywhere, is now a proclaimed, filmmaker, right? Who's made, commercials for Nike and all these big companies and Mercedes. And he started out creating vlogs. If you and I start creating vlogs, like I've tried vlogging before, it didn't do anything. It sucked because I don't know how to do vlogs the way he does. So he found his voice. And so I do think that, let's say, I know your heart is to create badass homes that are built to quality, and keep pushing the envelope of like what's in the industry, right? But then there is always opportunity to do content or YouTube that is as high of quality or as high captivating quality or as engaging or as viral as anything else. But I think there has to be a level of obsession that you have to sit down and be like, how do we shoot this where I'm like the Gary V or the the Will Smith, poor timing, or whoever else of that. Like it's just, there's just people out there, who just know how to have a certain kind of voice in it.
I don't know. Maybe it's good timing though. Maybe that's a target word right now. Will Smith. Yeah.
We'll add that to our keywords. Will Smith. I
actually did. We did on our podcast.
Did you really?
Yeah, we the last like 7 minutes, I had like a take on it, and then what was funny is we clipped it. We put it on YouTube, and like we have a consistent numbers for what clips we'll do, and that one just like blew. It didn't do crazy, but it did do a couple of thousand views on it. I was like, whoa, okay,
yeah,
ride that train. So if you want to right now spend a few minutes for your take on Will Smith, we'll clip that and we'll just throw you.
So you guys have a podcast. Is it you and your wife?
Yeah, my wife Irina. Yep.
And why is it called Next Door Neighbors?
So the idea behind it was kind of like we talk about content creation, entrepreneurship, parenting, exactly everything that we've been talking on this podcast. But because we both do it, right? Because as a husband and wife who are in the social media space and entrepreneurship, the discussions that we have with one another, it's as if like you're as if you're sitting at a dinner with your spouse and you're listening
Mm.
into this next door couple that's like sitting and having their own conversation at the table. So it's
Gotcha.
and it was kind of also a way for us to um, meet people that we'd have on our podcast, like yourself, and have conversations with them that are not scripted and they don't have any kind of agenda.
Hmm.
Where it's the same conversation you would have with them after dinner at your house over a cocktail, right? So
No, that
that's kind
makes
of
complete. When I heard the name of it, I was like, I swear that's his wife, but maybe they are neighbors. Like I was like, it's also kind of interesting to have like just have your neighbor be your podcast. That makes more sense. So I'm an idiot, and you're right. So
yeah.
Alex,
It's a lot of fun.
Alex, for anyone that is listening and wants to check out your channels, give them where the breakdown.
The breakdown, yeah, it's Mr. Buildin on almost any kind of platform out there. Yeah, we're doing a lot of cool stuff. Check out the podcast. We do weekly episodes, and we have a lot of fun.
Cool, man.
Captain
We
Build It.
appreciate you being on.
Well, thanks, guys.
Captain
This
Build
was
It.
a lot of fun. Captain Build It, El Capitan. All right, guys, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cheers, man. Take
All right,
care.
bye.
All right, dude. You can just X out. It will automatically rip that audio into our file, and we'll be good.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm pretty good at closing this thing.
You got it.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. See ya. He's a funny dude. I swore that they were neighbors. I was like, it looks like his wife, but it's called Next Door Neighbors.
Is his wife
Maybe
fine
just-
with him having a podcast with his next door neighbor who looks just like his wife?
Yeah, that's basically what went through my head. Never thinking that, hey, they're actually. I'm just, I'm not always the smartest, and I don't always put it together. But well, either way, well, hopefully you guys like that. I think that overarching, it's everyone at this point, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably doing some sort of content creation. And I thought it would be interesting to have a conversation around someone that makes a living off content creation and just hearing a little bit into, how he does it, the things he pays attention to. But he did reference Joe Rogan's podcast with Mr. Beast. If you'd like to, I would definitely recommend listening to that after you catch up on all the Modern Craftsman podcasts. It's a great episode, and it talks of, he's someone that genuinely builds a channel for his audience, spending all of his, I don't know, Tyler, if you're familiar
No,
with Mr. Beast,
I am
but
not.
it's like, it's worthwhile to listen to that podcast because it's just, he spends an enormous amount of his efforts, his time since he was a young child, and all of his money in putting out content, and doesn't have the lifestyle of, he talks about how he had the ability to have the big house and the crazy cars, but he just didn't give a shit about it, and all he does, he's obsessed with YouTube. He's never even seen a movie.
Oh, you know what?
Joe asked him about a movie. He's like, never heard of it, and he's like, what?
Yeah, I now that you say this, I'm looking him up right now, and I saw some sort of clip where they were talking about how much money he makes, and he's like, I probably make around $4 million per month, but I spend all of that on
In video.
making new content. He's
Wild.
like, so I don't make any money.
Yeah. All right, guys. Until next week. Oh, we got next week. We got Hannah from Lawless Design. I actually met Hannah locally here, and well, we're gonna talk all things interior design, her firm, what she stands for, and her husband. If you follow her on Instagram, are restoring a log cabin. Tyler, they are sanding every single log,
Really?
and shiplap board, like all of the clear. You know how it's always
Yeah.
orange clear varnish. Like they've been sanding it for months.
It's clear, and they
I-
just put like oil poly on it that just turns orange.
and it's like, and they've been sanding it for months now. And I messaged her today. I'm like, you guys are crazy. Like they don't have kids, obviously.
Yeah.
I feel like you couldn't never do this if you had kids. But it's just like she's like, yeah, I just didn't think she didn't think it'd be that hard. I'm like, I was like, go get yourself a Festool Rotex. Like you're gonna need
that sounds
something
terrible.
with some
Or
more
they
oomph,
should
but-
just have kids and then have their kids sand it.
You're gonna wait like 10 years. That's so much.
All
You gotta
right.
wait.
Be worth it.
We'll get into that next week. We'll see you guys then.